Hello and welcome to another episode of the Easy Relaxation Podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be working with a practice in visualization that was inspired by something I read on a card from a Essential Meditations deck that I own and have had for a number of years. In this particular practice, we're going to be working with our background hum. So, if you're like me, you tend to notice that when you have troubled thoughts or worries, it can often create this sort of background hum that will just play continuously in our mind. And even though it may not be at the forefront of our mind, it's there in the background, constantly, I suppose, tugging for our attention, playing over constantly, like when you have a tune that's sort of stuck in your mind, but playing very, very low, but still there, this sort of constant background hum. So what we're going to do in this exercise is we're going to use a visualization to help us with that. I find if you're anything like me, it's quite difficult sometimes to keep your attention on something. So this technique I'm going to go through with you can also be used as a way to train your mind to focus better if, like me, you find that you often have trouble maintaining focus, particularly early on in a meditation or visualization. And how we're going to do this is we're going to imagine ourselves with a sort of old-fashioned radio tuning in to silence. So what I'd like you to do is, and you can do this again either seated, lying down, or with your eyes closed or open, whatever you do, you want to do it in a manner, however you're seated or whatever position you adopt, or eyes open or closed, do it in a manner that is most conducive to the visualization. And I'll leave that up to you to decide. So what we're going to do is imagine this radio. It just has to be the sort of radio where you have that sort of old-fashioned tuning dial, I suppose is the right word for that. And what we're trying to tune into is the station of silence. So when we switch on our radio, so we can imagine switching on our radio, often we'll get that hum and crackling sound because we're not tuned in. So just imagine yourself in front of this radio and you've just switched it on, and there's that background hum where you maybe can't quite discern anything. There may be overspill from other radio channels, or just a crackling or a squealing. So now what I'd like you to do is imagine yourself reaching out to the tuning dial, and rather than imagining yourself tuning into a radio station, imagine yourself tuning into silence. So just move that dial round, and as you do it, the nature of the hum and the background noise may change until at some point you're tuning to silence. And just do that until you tune into that station of silence. And just imagine that silence filling you. So not only does the radio become silent, but you do. Maybe your radio has a special fine-tune button so you can tune in really accurately to that silence. And there you are. Your radio is silent. You are silent and still, and your mind, it is also silenced. And now we're going to sit with this silence for a couple of minutes. And if you find that for some reason the radio goes slightly out of tune, I'll just remind you gently to just tune back into the silence. And if you find the radio has slightly tuned out, tune it back in again to silence. Again, if you find that you've slightly gone out of tune on your mental radio, just gently fine-tune it back into silence. So what I'd like you to do now is just leave your imaginary radio on that channel, but just let those images slowly dissolve and bring yourself back into the present. If you need to gently ground yourself to do that, then just notice the feel or the feeling of how whatever you're sitting or lying against feels, and use that as a way to bring yourself back into the present moment. And then once you're comfortable, you can just get up and go about your day. Thanks for listening. Bye for now. And I'll catch you in the next episode of Easy Relaxation.